Welcome back to another video. Please try to ignore this nice little skin blemish and the ridiculous hair. But this week, we just have a typical Q&A this week, and the topics we cover is being flexible in a mini cut, training in the morning and what to do with your nutrition, thoughts on training programs for natural athletes versus enhanced, like differences, also direct ab training, strength loss during a cut, and growing the traps and the neck. All right. So first off, Will asked me, he's used to kind of aggressive cutting, but he wants to take it a little bit slower and have some of that flexibility that can come with taking a fat loss phase a little slower. And he also mentioned that his weight fluctuates quite a lot, and he has a quite adaptive metabolism. So how should he approach this kind of slower fat loss when it's a little bit more challenging for him to tell if he's losing body fat or not when he's taking things a little bit slower? So I would say that in this situation, you probably want to be a little bit more careful on making changes to your calories super quickly. So for clients that I have that have their weight that fluctuates quite a bit, and it's pretty regular, like some people just have a pattern of, okay, their weight's up for a while, and then it comes down, and then it's up, and then it's down, and then it will stick, and then it'll drop 2 pounds. And if you notice this pattern, I would be a little bit more conservative on when you make changes to your calories and when you adjust things. So for you, you know your weight fluctuates quite a bit. If you have 1 week to where you don't lose a lot of weight, I'd say, hey man, don't worry about it. Give it another week. But then if you have 2 straight weeks to where you're really not losing at your target rate of loss, then I would adjust things. So the first kind of thing I would do to approach this is probably be a little bit conservative on when you make changes, because you know historically that your weight fluctuates quite a lot. Now, regarding kind of your more adaptive metabolism, that kind of points things in the other direction to where it's like, okay, you know that your metabolism adapts pretty quickly. It might be a good idea to be a little bit more assertive with changing the calories because of your more adaptive metabolism. So that's like the exact opposite of what you might do if you experience more weight fluctuations. So if I had someone that I knew that they had maybe a little bit more adaptive metabolism from working with them in the past, and they also don't have a lot of weight fluctuations, then for them, I'm going to be pretty assertive with changing calories when they're not losing weight. Like if they don't lose weight for 1 week, then I'm probably going to change things, because things for them usually are a little more linear and they have a more adaptive metabolism, so they probably need it. But in your case, your weight fluctuates a lot and you have a pretty adaptive metabolism. So for you, I'd probably land somewhere in the middle. I still wouldn't want to adjust weight super quickly because you have those fluctuations. But I also wouldn't want to be so conservative to where, you waste 3 weeks and you end up not really losing a whole lot of weight. So for you, I might give it 10 days, somewhere in the middle of, okay, instead of giving it a full couple weeks, instead of giving it just 5 or 6 days, what I might do if someone is in the other camp, then we probably land somewhere in the middle. All right. So I hope that helps you out, man. And one thing that I will say is, like, you can still be fairly aggressive while having some flexibility. And just because you're being pretty aggressive doesn't mean that you automatically can't have some days to where you're more flexible. And I think that the way to look at it is like, hey, okay, I'm going to set up this fat loss phase. I'm going to be pretty aggressive with it. So, I want to be fairly strict, but if a few days come up to where I want to be more flexible and I just kind of go up to maintenance or do whatever I need to do on that day, then like worst case scenario, it's only adding a day or two to your diet and a day or two in that kind of aggressive deficit, and it's not a big deal. All right. Now, if you set up an aggressive deficit and every week you're kind of falling off the rails, or you're adding so much flexibility to where you're not making any progress on a weekly basis, okay, well, in that scenario, then dieting anyway in that scenario probably isn't going to be a good idea. All right. So just because you set up a more aggressive fat loss phase doesn't mean you can't have days here and there to where you're more flexible. But we do kind of want to get in and out of those pretty quickly. So I totally understand you wanting to take a slower approach there. But I would just kind of fall in the middle of, okay, instead of changing my calories like every 4 to 6 days, I might take a little bit longer, but we also don't want to take too long because your metabolism's a little bit more adaptive. So I hope that helps out, Will. And the next question comes from Scott, and he asked me about what do I recommend for training about an hour after waking up? 30 grams of whey protein, intra-workout. What do I think there? And Donna, if you're watching this, she also asked me this because her schedule changed to where now she has to lift in the morning, and it's kind of like this situation where lifting about an hour after waking up, what should they do? Is fasting okay? And that sort of thing. And from an optimality standpoint, it's probably a best idea to at least try to get in some protein before you work out and not work out in a completely fasted state, as muscle protein breakdown is probably going to be a little bit more elevated if you do train in that fasted state. So we probably want to have a little bit of protein before you work out. Like, I think that it could be as small as 20 to 30 grams of a whey protein shake, and you're probably going to be fine there. Now, should you have carbs and should you have an intra-workout and stuff like that? Well, if you're still hitting your daily carb intake and you're eating enough carbs in general, like, you're probably still going to have like pretty full glycogen stores going into your workout. And I don't think that having those carbs pre-workout are as important as getting a little bit protein in there to make sure that you mitigate that protein breakdown while you work out. Intra-workout, I just generally like having an intra-workout. I think that it can help performance, even if it's like 10 to 15 grams of faster digesting carb source that you sip on throughout your workout. Just having that carbohydrate mouth rinse can kind of help performance. It helps me just kind of feel better throughout my workout. And I recommend that kind of in general, regardless of training in the morning or not. So I still think that would be a good idea. Now, if you're training for like 45 minutes, I think that in your question here, Scott, you actually did mention your workout's like 45 minutes. In that case, is having an intra workout really going to matter much? Probably not. But I still think that there's a very low kind of a risk to just trying, 10 to 15 grams of carbs in your workout and seeing if it makes you feel better, if you notice any difference in your performance. If not, scratch it. It's not going to be a big deal, all right? But what I would do is, let's at least try to get some protein in that kind of pre-workout area so we're not completely fasted. Now, if you're like, hey man, I just can't stomach it, I can't have protein in that pre-workout window and I feel full and stuff like that, okay. Totally not the end of the world and stuff like that. Like, you're still going to be able to make progress and you're still fine, all right? But what I would do in that case is, okay, now that we're training fasted and we don't have that pre-workout, let's make sure that we have that post-workout as close as we can following your workout. Like, if you can do that within a half hour, that would probably be a good idea, all right? So try to get some pre-workout protein. I don't care as much about the carbs. Intra-workout carbs in general, I think it's worth a try. And then if you don't have that pre-workout, then let's be a little bit more aggressive with getting that post-workout in a little bit sooner. All right? So I hope that helps you out there, Scott. Donna, I hope that kind of clarified what I also told you in our check-in. All right? Third question, thoughts on training programs for natural versus enhanced. So I don't have a great answer to this because I don't know enough about the enhanced side of things to really say the differences that happen. Now, are there differences in muscle protein synthesis, rates of recovery, stuff like that? Absolutely. But then again, are you just more massive and you're bigger and you're pushing more weight and you're stimulating yourself more each set? So really it ends up being a little bit similar. Like if you look at Dr. Mike's training, it doesn't look that much different than like mine or Steve's or other people that are kind of natural. And I think that general principles still apply across natural and enhanced, which is why I'm still comfortable with listening to Mike and other people that might be on. Oh, I don't want to feel like I'm calling these guys out because I'm definitely not. Like, I love these guys. They're the best, and they're pretty open about potential usage of special sport supplements. So I hope this doesn't come across like I'm calling them out or anything like that, like those natty or not videos or something like that. That's like the goal, is to get on those and to have someone think that you're not natty. But anyways, I think that the general principles apply. Like your training should be specific to your goal. Your training should have some sort of overload or homeostatic disruption. Like it should cause a stimulus for the adaptation you're shooting for. There should be some sort of kind of fatigue management in your training to where you have off days, rest days, stuff like that. Off days and rest days are the same thing. Off days, deloads, maintenance phases. All those things kind of apply, I think, to naturals and enhanced. But there's definitely probably some more nuances in there that I just can't quite answer for the differences between natural and enhanced. So general principles absolutely think apply. But I also think that there's some nuances in there to where I personally wouldn't, I wouldn't be comfortable like giving someone recommendations on the dosage side of things and stuff like that. Like I still think I can apply the general principles and structure their training and stuff like that. But when it comes to some other stuff in there, I'm not as comfortable with. So I hope that kind of answers your question. General principles still apply. Some of the specifics might be a little bit different, all right? Next question, direct ab training, ? I think that it seems as though like 50% of people just have really solid ab genetics. They don't really have to train their abs, and their abs look good when they get lean, and they're solid. Their abs are fine based on their compound lifts and stuff like that. But I think that another portion of people, they can really benefit from training their abs directly and building their abs up so they pop a little bit more when they get pretty lean. And this is something that I have noticed personally. Like when I was in high school, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I wanted my abs to look good. So all I did, well, not all I did, well, pretty much just trained arms and abs, but I trained a shit ton of abs, and when I got lean, my abs looked really good. And then in college, I kind of went the route of, I don't need to train my abs. I have better stuff to do with my time. And then I noticed when I leaned down, I did think that I lost a little bit of that pop in my abs to where like they were still there, but they didn't look quite as sharp, and they didn't look like they popped quite as much. And then I started training them again, and now my abs, you can see a little bit more at higher body weights, and you can see a little bit more at higher body fat percentages, and they definitely pop quite a bit more when I'm a little bit leaner. So I definitely think that a good portion of people, if they grow their abs at least to some degree, then they might pop a little bit better when you're leaner, and they might make you look a little bit better when you're a little bit heavier. So I'm generally a fan of direct ab training, and it can be like 2 or 3 sets, 3 or 4 times a week. Like that's an extra like 5 to 10 minutes in your workout. And if that's not much of a priority to you, then hey, you can skip it. but I don't think that there's a huge time cost to that. And I don't think it's a huge like systemic recovery cost. And I think it can definitely have benefits, especially when you get leaner and stuff like that. So I'm a fan. Do you need to train abs while you're cutting? You can probably bring down volume for sure, because you can probably maintain pretty well with your compounds and stuff like that. I would probably keep in at least a little bit of work just to play it safe, but I definitely think that you can bring volume down a little bit, all right? And the next question asked me about the neck and trap. So I do train my traps directly, and I train my neck directly, and I got some questions about that. And I do it just generally because I think that your neck and traps is a big portion of how kind of masculine you look, and your presence, and how jacked you looked. And if we're doing this thing to look pretty jacked when we're wearing clothes and stuff, then I think the neck and traps make a pretty big difference. And when I was in high school, I played football, and I was always wearing a helmet, and my neck in high school was pretty dang big. And then in college, I stopped doing that, and I noticed my neck kind of atrophied a little bit, and I really didn't like that. So now I did some direct training for my neck. I kind of got it back up to the levels that it was previously, and now I kind of more so maintain it. So to get it back up to levels previously, all I did was 3 sets, 3 times a week of neck flexion and neck extension. So I didn't do any lateral. I think that flexion kind of works both sides here pretty well. And then extension, I actually really felt extension in my traps, and kind of it can still make your neck look definitely thicker. So I just did 3 sets of flexion extension 3 times a week. That was plenty. I probably had some muscle memory there, but I still think that would be a decent starting place. And, I think the best way to go is buying a neck harness and doing it at home, so you don't have to feel like a weirdo at the gym. And you're going to feel a little weird regardless. Make sure to warm your neck up before doing it, doing some front and back head nods, even side to side, making sure your neck is loose, or else you'll get like little twinges in your neck, and you'll be walking around and you'll be turning like that, and it just won't be a good time, okay? So that's where I start with that. I also train my traps directly. I train my traps directly 4 times a week, and I do dumbbell shrugs each time, because the barbell feels like it restricts me, and the dumbbell, I can really kind of set my traps and get a nice contraction there. I think that you could also use a cable on those as well, but I like doing it with both hands, so I can just get the set over with, and those I do 4 times a week for 3 sets each session. So that's about 12 sets a week. And I do them. So I switched up my training split a little bit to where it's now push, pull, legs. And I basically train traps on my upper days and don't train them on my lower. I do that because I don't want the systemic fatigue for my traps when I'm already pretty systemically fatigued from my lower body sessions. And I do my traps at the end because, yes, I want to grow them, but they're a lesser priority right now anyways, because I'm pretty happy with where they're at compared to like biceps, delts, and stuff like that. All right. So that's what my training looks like. That general principles still apply, like training them like other muscle groups, but keep in mind that you get some extra stimulus from other stuff, some non-direct stimulus for your traps and even for your neck. So you might be able to err on the lower side of volume. So your MEV might be like 6 or 7 sets compared to training your chest to where it could be around 10 sets, all right? Because of that indirect stimulus you're getting. And the final question asked me, okay, so they lost some strength. They think they might have lost some muscle, but now the gyms are reopening back up. Should they go, and they want to cut? Should they go right in the cut? Should they have a mesocycle out to regain strength and muscle and stuff? And my preference would be to have one mesocycle back to where you're eating enough food so you can regain all lost muscle, you can regain strength and really start that fat loss phase from a position of strength. That would be my preference. However, I still think that someone's going to regain strength and regain muscle in that first mesocycle back, regardless of whether they're cutting or not. So I still think that you're going to see a little bit of a recomp and regain some strength. Would you regain more strength and potentially more muscle if you didn't cut right away? I think so. And I would probably prefer starting kind of from a position of strength. But if your strength isn't like number one priority to you and losing fat is definitely the number one priority and you really want to get to it, then I would say that you're probably fine going into a fat loss phase and getting to it, and you're still going to gain back some of that muscle, some of that strength, and it just might not be to the extent of if you had a few weeks in there of eating enough food and getting back to the gym. So my preference would be a full mesocycle, eating enough food when you come back. But if it's a huge priority for you to drop fat and you're at a time deadline or something like that, then I think that you can kind of just get to it, and you're probably still going to regain some strength and muscle. All right. So that's the questions this week. Let me know if you have any questions for future Q&As, and I'll see you guys next week.